That wasn't new. Her name was Maya, and for 7 years she had been the person I called first when anything in my life got loud. We met in the most Maya way possible. I was in line at a bookstore cafe, reaching for the last blueberry scone, when she got there first and said, "You look like the kind of man who survives disappointment badly." I told her I was willing to prove her right. She broke the scone in half and handed me the bigger piece. That was the beginning. After that, she somehow ended up everywhere. Study sessions, weekend errands, long drives that started as one stop and turned into 3 hours. The kind of friendship that gets mistaken for romance by cashiers, aunt cousins, coworkers, and one very confident Lyft driver who once said, "You two have the energy of people who either are in love or deeply need boundaries." Maya laughed so hard she snorted. I laughed too. Then we changed the subject like professionals. That was our specialty. Stay close enough to matter, never honest enough to break it. Other people came and went. Dates happened. None of them lasted long on either side. I used to tell myself that meant nothing. Then one night, after a woman I'd gone out with twice said, "You talk about Maya like she's your actual emergency contact for life," I went home and stared at my ceiling for an hour. So, no, I wasn't completely clueless. Just careful in all the wrong directions. By the time we got back to my place that night, Maya was running on pure emotional fumes. She kicked off her shoes by the door, stole my gray hoodie from the back of a chair without asking, and curled up on the couch beside me with the kind of exhausted silence that meant she trusted me enough not to fill it. "How's your grandmother?" I asked. "She called the nurse dramatic and asked for lipstick," Maya murmured. "That feels promising. That feels exactly like her." I smiled. For a while, we just sat there with the TV on low and neither of us watching it. At some point, Maya shifted, muttered, "You're warmer than this couch," and dropped sideways until her head landed in my lap like that had already been approved somewhere in the bylaws of our friendship. I looked down at her. "You can't just do that and fall asleep," I said. Her eyes were already closed. "Watch me." Then she did. I should probably explain this too. Maya was always casually physical with me in ways that would have ruined a weaker man. Leaning against my shoulder in lines, stealing my jacket, falling asleep on long drives with one hand still hooked in my sleeve, like I might vanish at a red light. Usually I survived by acting like my heartbeat belonged to somebody else. That night was harder. Her hair was still slightly damp from the mist outside. One of her hands rested against my stomach, loose and trusting. I was sitting very still because moving felt illegal. Then her phone lit up. Not a call, not a text, a draft notification. The screen, face up on the cushion beside her, glowed bright enough to catch my eye before I could look away. And there it was. Draft saved. If I tell Noah the truth, I lose him. If I don't, I lose him anyway. I went completely still. The TV kept talking, rain tapped softly at the windows. Maya slept through all of it with her head on my lap like she had no idea her phone had just turned my whole brain inside out. I should have looked away immediately, I know that. Instead, I stared at those two lines and felt every version of the last 7 years rearrange itself in real time. Because there are a lot of things a man can pretend not to understand. That was not one of them. Maya shifted in her sleep, her forehead brushing my wrist, and I looked down at her face. Soft now, unguarded, exhausted enough that whatever she had been writing had clearly stayed with her right into sleep. Then her phone screen went dark. And suddenly I was alone with two impossible problems. The fact that I had seen it, and the far worse fact that some part of me had been waiting years to. I stayed still for maybe another minute. Not because I was deciding whether to keep reading. I wasn't. That part was over. The screen had gone dark. The lines were gone. But now they were inside my head, and there was no decent way to pretend otherwise. Maya slept for another few minutes, then shifted, frowned faintly, and opened her eyes with the slow disorientation of someone waking up in the wrong place. She looked up at me, then around the room, then back at me again. "Oh," she said softly, that's embarrassing." "Falling asleep?" "On you." A pause. "In your hoodie." During what I assume was deeply inconvenient emotional tension. That is a surprisingly accurate summary. She smiled a little, but it didn't last. I could feel the moment approaching. That quiet, high fragile second when either I lied and dragged this out, or I told the truth and changed everything. Maya pushed herself up slowly and tucked one leg under her on the couch. How long was I out? Not that long. Long enough to drool? No. That sounded too fast. It was truthful. She studied my face then, really studied it, and the small humor in hers started to fade. What? She asked. I didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. Maya's eyes flicked to her phone on the cushion. Then back to me. Then she went very still. Her voice dropped. My screen lit up. I nodded once. She closed her eyes. Not dramatically. Just like she was already exhausted by what came next. I didn't read anything else, I said. That is not the comforting part. I know. Maya looked down at her hands. How much did you see? 2 lines. She gave one short, helpless laugh. That was unfortunately enough. Yes, it was. Rain tapped softly at the windows. The TV was still running some sitcom laugh track in the background, which now felt wildly disrespectful. Maya reached for her phone, locked it without looking, and set it face down on the coffee table like it had personally betrayed her. Then she said, I was trying not to do this tonight. Because of your grandmother? That too. I waited. She rubbed the sleeve of my hoodie over one hand, a nervous habit I'd seen before, but never understood until that moment. She woke up in recovery and looked at me like she was about to say something very profound. What did she say? Maya let out a breath that almost became a laugh. She said, if you love somebody, I don't build a whole personality around pretending you don't. I stared at her. That does sound like your grandmother. It was horrible timing, Maya said. I nearly choked on hospital pudding. Despite everything, I smiled. She didn't, or not fully, because now the room was carrying too much. The draft, the quote, the fact that 7 years of carefully managed closeness had just taken one very public step toward becoming impossible to manage at all. Maya, I said quietly, were you writing that about me? She looked at me like I'd asked something unfair, which maybe I had. Then she leaned back into the couch, stared up at the ceiling, and said, do you want the easy answer or the real one? The real one. That feels reckless. We're past safe. That made her look at me again, longer this time. Like she was checking whether I understood what I was asking her to do. Then she nodded once, almost to herself. Yes, she said. No hesitation after that? No joking around it. Just yes. My whole body reacted before my face did. I knew because Maya saw it happen and immediately looked away. That was why I didn't want you seeing it, she said. Not because it wasn't true. Because once it was out where you could see it, I didn't get to pretend I could edit it into something less humiliating. It's not humiliating. It absolutely is. No, I said, softer now. It's honest. Maya laughed once, but there was no humor in it. That is a very generous word for me falling asleep on your lap with a confession draft glowing beside my face. I shifted toward her. Not much, just enough to make it clear I wasn't retreating. I then call it bad luck. She looked at me, eyes bright and tired all at once. You really don't understand what this does to me, do you? That question hit harder than the draft, because she wasn't asking whether I knew she liked me. She was asking whether I understood what it cost her to sit this close to me for years and still stay quiet. I answered honestly. I think, I said slowly, I'm starting to realize I should have understood sooner. Maya didn't move. Neither did I. The room had gone very still now, like even the rain was listening. Then she said, almost under her breath, that is not a no. No, I said. It isn't. Her face changed, not into relief. Relief would have been easier. This was worse and better than that. Hope trying very hard not to trust itself too fast. Maya? She shook her head once. Al, don't say anything kind unless you mean it. I held her gaze. Then I said the one thing I had apparently spent 7 years avoiding because it would have made the rest of my life impossible to mislabel. I don't think I've ever been just your friend about this. Her breath caught. and suddenly the whole apartment felt too small for whatever came next. Maya didn't blink. She just looked at me like the room had tilted and she was trying to decide whether to trust the floor. "What does that mean?" she asked. It was a fair question, an annoyingly fair one. Because I don't think I've ever been just your friend about this sounds meaningful right up until someone asks you to explain it like an adult. So I did. It means, I said, that every time I dated someone, I ended up measuring the whole thing against you. I glanced at the rain on the windows, then back at her. And every time something happened, good, bad, stupid, whatever, you were still the person I wanted first. Maya stayed very still. I kept going before I could lose the nerve. I told myself that was normal because you were my best friend. But normal people don't spend years pretending their whole emotional life isn't built around one person. Her breath caught. That small sound nearly did me in because suddenly the last 7 years looked different. Not just from her side, from mine too. The late night calls, the way my mood changed when she walked into a room, the way everyone else felt like an interruption to the real conversation. Maya tucked one leg farther under her and said, "You are saying this very calmly for someone who just found out his best friend has apparently been drafting private emotional disasters about him." I smiled a little. "I'm trying not to scare either of us. That is not working." "Fair." That got the tiniest lift at the corner of her mouth, but it faded fast. Because this wasn't funny. Not really. Not with the truth finally sitting in the room without any disguises left. Then Maya asked, quieter now, "If you knew even a little, why didn't you ever say anything?" The answer came too easily. "Because you mattered too much." Her face changed at that, softened but also hurt, like she had wanted that answer and hated what it implied. "You thought I'd leave?" "No," I said. "I thought I'd change us." That landed exactly where it should have. Maya looked down at the sleeves of my hoodie, eye still twisted around her fingers. "You know what's awful?" "What?" "I understand that completely." We sat with that for a second. Two people who had apparently spent years protecting the same thing from the same fear and doing a terrible job of it from opposite sides. Then her phone buzzed. The sound cut through the room hard enough to make both of us jump. Maya grabbed it too fast, checked the screen, and let out a breath. "My mom." I nodded. "Take it." She stood, paced once toward the kitchen, then answered. I couldn't hear much, just fragments. "Yeah, I know." "No, she's okay. I'll come by in the morning." Her voice got softer after that, more daughter than friend, more tired than anything. When she came back, she looked wrung out all over again. "She's staying overnight with my grandmother," she said. "They want me there early." "That's good, right?" "Yeah." She sat back down, but not as close this time. "It's just, tonight got bigger than I expected." I understood what she meant. Not just the hospital, us, the draft, the confession, everything. And maybe that was the problem with nights like this. They give you just enough truth to change your life, and then they ask you to wait until morning to see if you still mean it. Maya looked at me carefully. "Tell me something honest." "I thought that's what we've been doing." "More honest," I smiled. "Demanding." "Please." That last word changed it, so I told her the truth she was actually asking for. "I want to kiss you," I said. Her whole face went still. I added, But I don't want either of us to wonder tomorrow if this was just exhaustion and hospital fear and one badly timed phone notification." Maya stared at me for a second, then let out one soft breath that sounded dangerously like relief. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" That was the right answer. I laughed under my breath. "Good. I'm having a difficult night." "I noticed." Then she looked at me in that terrifyingly open way that made everything else in the apartment feel temporary. "And if I told you," she asked, "that I've wanted you to say something like that for years?" "I'd say I'm very late." "You are. I know. You keep saying that like it fixes anything." "It doesn't." I shifted a little closer again. "But it might help tomorrow if I say something better." Maya's eyes flicked to my mouth and back up. Tomorrow, she repeated. Yes. She nodded once. Not because she was disappointed, because she was deciding to believe me. That was somehow harder to handle. Then she stood, walked around the coffee table, and stopped in front of me. I should go home, she said softly. If I stay, I'm not going to make responsible decisions. That seems fair. It's not fair, it's annoying. Also fair. She smiled then, small and helpless and warm enough to make me forget every other sentence in the English language. Then she did something much worse for my peace of mind. She leaned down, pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, and whispered, "Don't make me wait another 7 years, Noah." And just like that, she grabbed her coat, took her phone, and left me alone on the couch with my pulse in complete disarray. When I stood there listening to the rain and the fading sound of her footsteps in the hallway, realizing one thing with absolute miserable clarity. Tomorrow had just become the most important day of my life. I did not wait. That was the first thing I got right. By 7:30 the next morning, I was outside St. Vincent's with 2 coffees, 1 blueberry scone, and the deeply unhelpful awareness that I had not been this nervous since the first time Maya met my parents and won my mother over in under 4 minutes. The hospital lobby smelled like disinfectant and burnt toast. I found Maya in the family waiting area outside recovery, sitting cross-legged in one of those blue vinyl chairs, hair tied up badly, my hoodie still on, reading the same magazine page like it had personally offended her. She looked up, saw me, and the whole room changed. And not dramatically, just enough. Enough that I knew coming had been the right choice. "You came early," she said. "You threatened me." That was not a threat. Emotionally, it absolutely was. A smile tugged at her mouth. Good. Breathing seemed possible again. I handed her the coffee. No dramatic speeches before caffeine. I'm trying to show growth. She took the cup and looked at it. "You remembered the extra cinnamon." "I remember everything about you. That's sort of the problem." That changed her face. Not embarrassed this time. Warmed. Then she said, "Sit down before I have to process that standing up." So I sat. For a minute, we just drank coffee. Her mother stepped out once, saw me, gave Maya a look that said, "I'm not asking now, but I absolutely will later," and disappeared again with more grace than either of us deserved. Finally, Maya asked, "Did you sleep?" "No." "Good. Me neither." "That feels healthy." "It feels fair." I turned toward her. "Maya, I meant what I said last night." She looked at me over the rim of her cup. "Which part?" "All of it." "That is annoyingly broad." "Fine." I set my coffee down. "I meant that I've loved you in the most obvious, invisible ways for years. I meant that every time I called you my best friend, I was only telling half the truth. And I meant that I'm done letting fear do our communication for us." She stared at me. Hospital quiet settled around us, distant footsteps, elevator chimes, the soft roll of a cart somewhere down the hall. Then Maya asked the only question that mattered. "And now?" "Now," I said, "I'm asking you on a real date." That got her. A real laugh, sudden and bright enough to turn heads if either of us had cared. "In a surgical waiting room?" I never claimed I had elegant timing. You really don't. But yes, a real date. Not couch half sleep. Not accidental emotional collapse. Not years of everyone else being smarter than us. I held her gaze. Dinner, on purpose. With the full and scandalous knowledge that I want this to be something. Maya's eyes softened so quickly it nearly wrecked me. "That," she said quietly, "is a much better follow-up than I was bracing for." "What were you bracing for?" "You panicking, becoming weirdly polite, maybe sending me a text in 3 business days. That is offensive. It is also based on history. Fair." I moved a little closer. "I'm trying to be less stupid than my previous model." She smiled into her coffee. "Yeah, good." Then she set the cup down, turned fully toward me, and asked, "And if I say yes?" I try not to look too smug in a hospital. Maya laughed again, shook her head, and then, in the gentlest voice possible, said, "Yes." There it was. No fireworks, no audience. Just one small word in a waiting room that somehow felt bigger than anything either of us had managed to say in 7 years.